Putin is running scared, and Prigozhin is someone that he's got a very careful eye on. It's not unusual that generals who get sacked and go on sick leave then die. Interestingly, there have been two deaths of very senior Russian officers in the last couple of days. General Zhidko, 58 years old, who was in charge of operations into Ukraine until April 2022. He was General Surovikin's predecessor and then went on to be his deputy. He died after an inverted commas long illness. He'd been sacked from his position because the Russians hadn't managed to capture Kyiv and do what Vladimir Putin had wanted them to do, and had been effectively on sick leave ever since then. It's not unusual that generals who get sacked and go on sick leave then die. This time, there's no confirmation as to whether he fell out of a window or whether he was. It was decided that it was his time for a heart attack. The other general that died is under sort of slightly less suspicious circumstances, but it's at the same sort of time. That was General Yoperev, who's a former FSB, the Russian Security Service general, who'd been imprisoned for allegedly embezzling funds and have been caught out with that. That's usually a charge that comes against generals who are working against the regime or not following the party political line, and he mysteriously died in prison at the same time. This could be indicative of Vladimir Putin continuing his purge of those that have opposed him. And of course, we haven't heard from General Surovikin after that so-called mutiny from the Wagner Group, and he was closely linked with the Wagner's chief financier, Prigozhin. Well, what is fascinating is with the individuals that are dying is that Prigozhin is still alive. It shows the level of influence that Prigozhin's got. And there's a lot of talk about Vladimir Putin trying to maneuver Russia and Russia's wider influence to isolate Prigozhin and Wagner even more, but maintain Russia's influence across the globe. We have to remember that the Wagner Group's influence in Ukraine is very, and what it achieved in Ukraine is very small compared to the Wagner influence on behalf of Russia on a global basis, especially across Africa. And that influence across Africa is part of the wider criminal funding network that is keeping Vladimir Putin and his oligarchs in the position that they're in through the exploitation of diamond mines, gold mines, hardwood resources, oil, and elsewhere. And it's important for Russia from a longer-term political perspective to maintain that whilst everything is going on inside Ukraine. It's part of the wider funding mechanism. It's part of the wider funding that the criminal oligarch network headed by Vladimir Putin needs to maintain access to. Putin is running scared, and Prigozhin is someone that he's got a very careful eye on. We have to remember Prigozhin was Putin's chef. You know, he became the catering contractor to the Kremlin and then to the Russian armed forces, and he was a man that was made. His position was made by Vladimir Putin. However, Prigozhin, as he was with his Wagner Group attacking into Bakhmut, made no secret of his wider political ambitions and potential ambitions to take over from Vladimir Putin. And as soon as that came out, Putin will have been worried about him.